terrible deal. Let me tell the Minister that the British people do not support this appalling deal, giving away our strategic security asset, paying tens of billions of our taxpayers' money in the process, and suffering tax rises in order to pay for it, in order that the Mauritians get tax cuts. Since the government's in the mood of U-turns, why don't they take the hint and U-turn on this terrible Chagos deal?
Well, Mr. Speaker, I'm not going to take any lessons from a party that fawns over Vladimir Putin.
The messenger.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In his statement on the 22nd of May, the Defence Secretary stated, with regards to potential legal rulings against us, that the most proximate and the most potentially serious is the International Tribunal for the Law of the Sea. The US, who operate the base, aren't even signatories to UNCLOS. How would ITLOS have ruled a binding legal judgment that we would have recognised? Because it's notable that ITLOS has not been mentioned since that statement.
Minister.
I am confused. I have mentioned ITLOS on a number of occasions, including just a moment ago. But the long-standing view, Mr. Speaker, of the United Kingdom is the UK would not have a realistic prospect of successfully defending its legal position on sovereignty in such litigation. And even if we chose to ignore binding judgments made against us, which we won't do, their legal effect on third countries and international organisations would give rise to real impacts to the operation of the base and the delivery of its national security functions. International organisations have already adopted decisions based on Mauritian sovereignty, and others would follow suit following such litigation, and that could affect the electromagnetic spectrum, access to the base by air and by sea, the ability to patrol the maritime area around the base and to support the base's critical national security functions. And further, Mr. Speaker, the UK would likely face a provisional measures order within a matter of weeks. The position is very clear. We have explained this. His previous government knew exactly the same, and however much he shouts and however much he doesn't like the arguments, Mr. Speaker, they are the facts.
Jeremy Corbyn.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Would the Minister confirm that 40 years ago the most disgusting, cynical injustice was done against the Chagos Islanders, and it was their resolute campaigning over decades, often alone, with very little friendship or support, that eventually brought the whole case to international law and an opinion from the International Court of Justice, which has brought about the situation we're now in. So instead of opposition parties over here obsessing themselves with the twilight of empire, shouldn't they be thinking about the injustice done to the Chagos Islanders? And would he confirm that in the arrangements now being made, the Chagos Islanders, wherever they are resident, whatever their opinions are, do have a right of return? And will he give us some idea of what the attitude will be about the right of visit, the right of residence and the right of return to Diego Garcia itself, where the majority of the Chagos Islanders have come from? Because they are a people that have been badly treated by history and are being now used as pawns by people who are more interested in defending some strange notion of the twilight of empire rather than the justice for those people.
Minister.
Well, Mr. Deputy Speaker, the primary purpose of this deal was, of course, to secure the base on Diego Garcia and the national security of the UK and our allies. But he is right to point out the situation regarding the Chagosians historically, and we have expressed deep regret for the way that they were removed from the islands in the 1960s and 70s. Indeed, that's on the face of the treaty. We recognise the importance of the islands to the Chagosians, as well as the different views within the community that he's well acquainted with. We will be restarting those visits, including to Diego Garcia. The programme of resettlement to islands outside Diego Garcia will be for Mauritius to determine, but we've committed to the members of our Liberal Democrat benches in the other place that we'll be providing further statements on that in due course and how that will work. We've also got the trust fund, we've also got the support we provide here in the UK. So we are listening to the different Chagosian groups and we're trying to make sure that their interests are at the heart of this as we move forward.
The
Minister will be aware of a pending judicial review challenge focused on the lack of consultation with the Chagosians. Why was there not full and adequate consultation with the Chagosian people?
Minister.
Well, Mr. Deputy Speaker, I'm not going to comment, obviously, on ongoing judicial matters, but as I've set out a number of times, the negotiations were necessarily between the UK and Mauritius. However, we recognise the importance of the islands to Chagosians, and that's why the measures that we've set out, I set out to the right honourable gentleman a moment ago, have been put in place.
Order. Point of order.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In answer to the Honourable Gentleman for St Ives, the Minister seemed to imply, to our ears anyway, that the United States would be paying, and I think he said, a larger quantum of the funding for this deal. Now, I think he was referring to the operational cost of the base, but therefore, can I ask for confirmation that the United States is not contributing at all to the £30 billion lease under this settlement?
Order. That's not a point of order for the Chair, as the honourable gentleman appreciates. But if the Minister wishes to respond, I'll allow him to do so.
Further to that point of order, Mr Deputy Speaker, and perhaps it was the noise, perhaps it was the shouting, I was very clear the United States contributes to the operations on Diego Garcia, and rightly so, and as establishment of that in relation to the exchange of notes between the UK and the United States, they're not contributing towards the costs of the treaty deal.
Order. That concludes the discussion on the urgent question. Can the front benches now change as swiftly as possible, please? Thank you. We now come to a statement from the Minister of State for Energy, Michael Shanks. Minister.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker. With permission, I'd like to make a statement on the publication of the report from the National Energy System Operator, or NESO, following their review into the fire at the North Hyde substation on the 20th of March. NESO's review was commissioned jointly by the Energy Secretary and Ofgem in the immediate aftermath of the fire, which disrupted power supply to over 70,000 customers, including, of course, Heathrow Airport, which closed operations on the 21st of March this year. While power from the grid was restored quickly to customers, there was significant secondary impacts to the aviation sector due to the associated closure of Heathrow Airport. My right honourable friend, the Secretary of State for Transport, made a statement to the House at the time where she committed that the Government would update the House as soon as the relevant investigations had concluded. And that's why I'm making this statement before the House today, on the day that NESO's report was published. Before I update the House on the key findings of the review, I'd like to reassure members that the Government is taking action in response to the report. We will urgently consider the findings of the review and have committed to publish a Government response which will set out a plan on how these issues identified will be addressed in order to improve our energy resilience. Having reviewed the report, as I'm sure members will agree, I'm deeply concerned that known risks were not addressed by National Grid Electricity Transmission, a key operator of our electricity system. NGET's own guidance is clear. Based on the elevated moisture samples NGET themselves took in 2018, the asset should have remained out of service until mitigating actions were put in place, or the asset should have been carefully monitored until it could be replaced. NGET failed to take action appropriate to the severity of this risk at North Hyde. This was most likely the cause of the catastrophic fire on the 20th of March 2025. I spoke to NGET this morning and made clear